Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey podcast. I'm joined today, and I'm joined as always by really the man of the hour. or actually, given our podcast, it's the man of the hours. Jason Johnston.
Only two, though.
Only two.
Not four. Don't hang up, Steve. It's only going to be two.
I'm here.
Does one hang up on a podcast? Is that what one does?
I think that's right. You know, first-time caller, long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm here to join you on the full 2 hours of your podcast.
So what makes me the man of... Oh, so I'm the man of the hours because it's podcast recording day.
Because here's the thing. There was a podcast that I listened to, is old schoolmates of mine, and the guy who hosted it every week was able to do some sort of an intro about his co-host, who is his longtime best friend. And each time it was new and it was fresh and it was interesting and I laughed. I've just come to realize I'm not as smart as my ex-schoolmate because I can never think of a new thing. And I never take the, at least on the spot, and I never take the time. And so I said, what do I do? And boom, there we go, man of the hours. So that's why. It was the thing that came to mind.
Who knew this was also a director's commentary? Like, this is a remarkable episode. You're not only performing, you're also describing the impetus behind the performance. This is a lot.
I feel bad for our listeners who grabbed the wrong DVD and all they hear is the director talk about it scene by scene. And this is where I took the camera and I did this.
Yeah, my kids asked me the other day, what is a director's commentary?
All right. And your answer was?
It's alien to them.
Did you answer them, or you just walked out the room?
I said, if you don't know, I can't tell you. No, it was just, like how do you describe a director's commentary? The people who made the movie sit and talk over the movie you're trying to watch. And my boys rightfully thought that sounded horrific. And why would anybody participate in that?
Yeah. I usually don't watch the director's commentary, but I always watch the director's cut because my moil tells me always watch for the director's cut. So listen. Listen.
Listen. Before we get away from this topic, before we actually start talking about whiskey, I once watched the director's cut of Brazil, and I have to say, it was excellent. Absolutely excellent. Brazil is already excellent.
Yes.
The director's cut was just as good as the movie.
It's been years since I've seen Brazil, but I recall that being quirky.
Oh, I think you've mispronounced masterpiece. Quirky. How dare you? No, a minute ago I might have said director's cut. I definitely meant to say director's commentary. However, it may have been a director's commentary on the director's cut. So anytime you can get meta, you should always get meta. I said that. But not with Mark Zuckerberg.
No, definitely not that.
No.
So can we talk about whiskey?
I would love nothing more than to finally talk about whiskey.
So last week, or maybe it was a week and a half ago, we got what I thought. Listen, we got what I thought was some of the biggest whiskey news to grace our inboxes, to grace various whiskey outlets, and that was that John Glazer of Compass Box has left Compass Box.
Oh, gosh. I still have not emailed James Saxon to say congratulations. James, if you're listening, sincere congratulations. Please come on the podcast and discuss it.
Yes, let's
And I apologize for not sending you an email.
And so perfect, right? James Saxon has taken over that spot as head blender. Is that his title?
He is director of whiskey making or lead whiskey maker.
You know, it's funny. I remember years ago, with Balcones, and Chip Tate ended up leaving the distillery. There's a whole story about that. We're not
under very different circumstances. Just to be clear, just to put this past legal, under very different circumstances.
And I remember when Chip had left, there was a number of like Balcones purists who said, I'm not going to drink Balcones anymore because Chip is not making the liquid anymore. Yeah. Meanwhile, Chip was not the only person making liquid at Balcones. Yeah. There was a number of people making it, and they continued to make great whiskey long after his departure. And so what I say here is look at the back of any somewhat recent Compass Box bottle, and you're going to see James's name there, right?
Yeah, and there's a team there, right?
Yeah.
James was part of a team, just like so many other spots around the spot. So many spots around the spot.
Yeah, and it's exciting. We've loved what he's been doing, and we're excited for what he will continue to do. But listen, we thought that was the biggest news, Jason.
I was wondering where this was going. Continuing on, yes.
Fast forward to Thursday,
to
March 14th, to Pi Day, and Single Cask Nation launched 3 new whiskeys on our website. I mean,
I'm so glad it took us 6 minutes to say that. There's no way that would have been an efficient 5-word sentence. There's just no way. No way. That's oh man.
You're welcome.
Wow, if we ever got an editor in here, like this first 10 minutes of recording would be 30 seconds long. Talk about a moil.
All right. Yeah, cut that down. But just the tip of it, please. So Jason, you and I launched a new website. You're still laughing? Like,
because you keep trying to bring this right back on course. And anytime you say, so Jason, I'm like, oh, here it comes. Here comes the edit on the fly. So
we're not editing a goddamn thing. This is going out completely uncut.
It's the director's cut of One Nation Under Whiskey.
But listen, this really is...
There it is.
Jason, can you let me take the steering wheel and move this podcast forward?
I will let go and let Joshua.
Tuesday. Now I can't even do it. Tuesday, March 12th, we launched a new website. As right, this is all new to us. This is under us as part of the Artisanal Spirits Company banner. We launched a new website, and we launched 3 new bottlings this past week on March 14th. Our 25-year-old Ardmore, which I have in my glass, by the way.
Me too. We both charged our glasses with the same release.
Refill Bourbon Magic. And then a 5-year-old Ardnamurchan first fill sherry, unpeated, just a absolute earthy yet sweet bomb of a whiskey. And then finally, a non-whiskey, our 3rd Kosher for Passover rum, a collaboration with our friends at Thornton Distilling in Thornton, Illinois. So that's really, really exciting, and some really positive sales on the Thursday. We still have some bottles left. Absolutely. At least at the time of this recording, we've got bottles left. So if you're listening now and you're thinking, do they still have bottlings? Go check it out. Who knows? At the time of this recording, we did.
Yep, and to be clear, the 3 bottles we're talking about ship within the United States of America.
Smart.
And we do have a few states right now that we're not shipping into, but we are looking to remedy that as we go along. But yes, this is a US-focused release. In the news segment today, we will talk about our global friends, and we will reference our dear Jess Lomas. But all in due course. On top of what you're saying there about the new website and this kind of increased functionality and this ease of use, we are working with a new shipping partner. And I think shipments are going to look different. And I've reached out to some Nation members and said, let me know how you feel about the speed of service.
Yeah.
Let me know how you feel about the quality of the package when it comes in. And so, we'd said one of the things with joining Artisanal was we can fine-tune some parts of the Nation and the servicing of the Nation that members themselves have been pointing out to us for a number of years.
Yeah.
And just before you and I hit record today, I was mentioning to you that a Nation member, we've been so proud of our $15 flat rate shipping fee for so many years, still in place, still being honoured today, and into the near future here. And someone acquired 3-day priority shipping. And that's a question we've been asked over the years. Hey, can I rush this to my doorstep? And we've always said, sorry, we package in the order that bottles are purchased. Where you are in the line is how a bottle will go out to you. And now, 3-day priority. So if you are in a rush to get some things, our website can absolutely be your friend.
Well, not just that. And here's the thing. The one part that you didn't necessarily mention was all of that was picked and packed and shipped the day of the order. Which is
priority.
With priority.
Priority means something. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in the past, the messaging had always been, okay, if you order by Tuesday or whatever the day was, we will start shipping next week, and then we can only ship X number of bottles per day.
Indeed.
And that has all changed now. The speed in which things get picked, packed, and shipped is completely flipped, and now it's happening lickety split. And yeah, I love it. I love that you point that out. We can do priority shipping now, which we hadn't been able to do before. So really fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, an option above and beyond $15 flat rate ground shipping. Yeah, it's exciting. Just another one of those places where we get to point out the subtle difference between pre and post artisanal partnership.
Yep.
And I think this is a great spot to point out something really cool coming from this.
Yeah, really, really positive. Listen, there's more that we want to talk about once we get into the news segment, because I do want to go over some of the tasting notes on these whiskeys, and like you'd said, talk about some of the whiskeys and things for countries outside of the U.S. But our guests today, we've had on the podcast before. We've got Jane Bowie, formerly of Maker's Mark, and Denny Potter, formerly of Maker's Mark. But actually, the first time we had him on the podcast was when he was with Heaven Hill, and visiting him at that distillery and going through the distillery at that time, and now here they are as two people, right, having what I would call cushy jobs with Maker's Mark. Like, here you are, two huge names with one of the biggest bourbon producers in the U.S., and you say, you know what? I'm going to take a chance, and I'm going to leave Maker's Mark and start a distillery with my friend. What an absolute bold move on both their parts, though if there's any, two people who can get things done, I think it's them. But still, it was great talking with them and hearing some of their vision and their whys and what fors and what they were aiming to do with this new company.
Yeah, I think their honesty, their transparency, obviously for us making the move from independence to a little bit of security with a corporate organization, one with whom we share a philosophy, of course. But the way they talked about taking their chance, right? Like, I do think coming out of this pandemic, people have talked a little differently and thought a little differently. And in the case of Jane and Denny, operated a little differently. And it's one aspect of what we cover in a very far-ranging but hugely fun interview.
Yeah.
Both so easy to sit and talk to, both so ready to share thoughts, emotions, realities. Really cool time with them. And we should wrap up this intro and give them the floor.
Deal.
We're joined today with Jane Bowie and Denny Potter. The last time we were able to hang out with the two of you, we were sitting in a conference room at Maker's Mark discussing future collaborations. And now everything has changed. How are you both, first of all?
We're good. I mean, we're doing it. We're a year and a half into it now. You know, we left Maker's Mark in early September of 22. And it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but in a way it seems like it's been a lifetime. It's very different. It's stressful, but at the same time, you know, it's just us. And, you know, we're designing this thing. We're building it. We're going to operate it with, 35, 40 team members. And, we're just kind of leaning into the experience we both have. And I don't know that we have a ton of confidence, but we also feel like, we do have the experience to get this thing off the ground the right way and continue to run it the way that we want to run it.
Okay. There's so much in what you just said to come back and unpack. But before we do that, Jane, how are you?
I'm good, and we can still talk about collaborations. That's still on the table. The timeline might look a little different, but I'm great. I mean, as good as you can be after drinking out of a fire hydrant for 18 months. But no, it's fun. It's different. It's been really different, and I think we've both grown a lot. But yeah, no complaints other than we were talking about before. There's a lot of things I miss about working at a corporation, the little things that you don't think about, like how do you have health insurance, or who sets up my laptop, that kind of stuff. So it's been interesting.
So I definitely want to return to that. I'm curious, where is the seed of this idea? You're both working Maker's Mark. You're both globally renowned individuals. And one of the two of you, or somehow, one of you said, hey, here's an idea. How much can you get into there without giving away too many secrets?
I think it's all of the above. So, when I started at Makers in 2007, Denny was running the distillery at the time, and I actually trained under him. And we were fast friends. And I think you guys know what it's like. When people love this industry, you kind of find those people. There's a kinship amongst people that just love it and live it and would do it for nothing. And so, we used to laugh about all the time if we were going to start a distillery or play distillery fantasy camp. So I think I had dreams that probably looked one way and his were a little bit different. We were neighbors, we were friends, we worked closely together every day. And so I think it just kind of organically happened, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you get into this industry, I started in the industry in 1998. And, back then, there weren't a ton of distilleries, but the ones that were around were, privately held or had a really rich tie to a family that, was running a generational operation. And I think, and you get to know these people, right? Whether it was Booker and Fred at Jim Beam, or then, Bill Samuels and then Rob at Maker's Mark. I mean, it goes on and on in the industry. and you fall in love with those brands. You love the stories. They're all about the family and how you got to where you are and the focus on quality and all of the things. And I think for us, it's, a lot of distillers, you always have that thought, man, how great would it be, if somehow, some way you could set up, and it's really not about the brand. It's about setting up like a generational operation, right? Like something that is going to live on, whether, your kids are involved or not. But, these communities that we live in are small and they're very family oriented. So when you set these distilleries up, it's not just for you. It's generations of families that work in these operations. So you always have that idea, but you just never really think that you're going to act on it. And kind of like Jane said, I think there are a lot of things that kind of came together just even through COVID and coming out of COVID, where it was like, you know what? Let's just see if we can do this, right? Like, let's, work on this in our spare time. And we thought we would have one conversation and it would die. And what happened was every conversation led to another conversation, and everyone was incredibly supportive. And then by the fourth or fifth conversation, you're like, well, maybe this might work. And then you just kind of keep going down that path. You're kind of believing that you're not going to do it, to be honest. But it's fun to go down the path. And then all of a sudden you get so far down the path and you're like, oh shit, we are going to go do this. Almost like, oh my God. We've come too far to not go do this now. So I don't know that it was really an aha moment more than it was, let's take a look at this and let's go talk to this person. And then there you go. And then here we are. Well, probably 2 years later, to be honest. Maybe even longer than that, the first time we kind of started talking about it. But it's pretty remarkable when we look back and you're like, my God, I don't know exactly how we got here, but we're here.
Yep.
Yeah.
No.
At what point in that, because, Jason and I, starting up, obviously a much smaller operation than what's in conversation now, there was a point in those conversations where you say, oh, this sounds great. And then there's that scary leap of faith. How far into your journey did that scary leap of faith happen? And is it still happening? Are you in free fall now?
I'd say it was about 6 months in. So one of our things, to kind of build on what Denny was saying, we also were neighbors at the time. We're friends. We fight, but we're very good friends. And so a lot of this was weekends because you're COVID and not allowed to do anything. So you're just brainstorming and talking about the kind of operation and this and that. And to Denny's point, we kept having these conversations, but we still really thought, we're not going to ever do this, right? Because our number one objective was, if we were to do this, we would want to own the business. And how can two idiots from Bardstown, Kentucky figure out how to build a $50 million distillery and still own the thing? That sounds like fiction. And the big moment was, we had been talking to a bank, and when they came in and said, we're going to fund this, and here's what it looks like. And they were so excited because we had been talking to them. And the first time we asked for the money, they laughed at us. We walked in with nothing except ourselves. We're like, would you like to give us this $50 million? And they're like, you're idiots, go back to work. So, but we had been talking. And so we were sitting down and they're like, we're going to give you the money. And we were so stupid. We didn't understand. And they were waiting for this big reaction. And I think one of us said, I'm going to be sick. That was the moment of oh my God, we have to go do this. And then there's been moments of obviously telling Maker's Mark and Beam Suntory was very emotional, and they were wonderful. Mm-hmm. They were supportive at the end of the day. Nice. But I think most of the time we don't really think about what we're doing. But then the first steel that went up on the building, we're like, oh shit. Oh no. This, you're equal parts happy and it's real. So I don't know if Denny has anything to add, but
no, it's that absolutely was the moment. I think it was actually Derby week. And I remember both of us, especially after they left, we were just almost paralyzed. And and it wasn't even just about having to go, talk to Rob Samuels and tell him. It was okay. It's been kind of a dream up until this point, but we've got to, really go do this. Like, we need to lean into, what we know and what we believe in. And it didn't last long. I mean, as far as like that initial, it's like, all right, okay, all right, now it's time to. Yeah. But as Jane said, we do have these moments, from the when we finally took possession of the 153 acres, and you go out there the first time, and you're like, what? Like, this is, and then the first time they start taking a bit of the tree line down so you can build the road back into the property. Like, there's all these little moments where you just can't believe it. And as Jane said, most recently, it's the steel that's going up and all the vertical. We got the cinder block going up, and the next big moment's going to be when they're actually putting the siding on, and when we drop the first tank in, when the still goes in. So you have all of these milestones, but at each one of them, you just kind of get goosebumps, and you're like, I cannot believe that we're doing this, but we feel good about it. Like, it's going incredibly well. So far so good.
I'm just sitting here astounded when I heard this news and then saw some reports. I never in a million years imagined it was just the two of you and a bank. There's not a team of investors behind all of this. It's the two of you looking each other square in the eye.
We have a little seed money, but I mean, not that our like 2,000 square foot houses are going to cover this debt. I mean, that's what they're like. You need to sign over your lives to us. And we're like, okay, that's like spitting on a bonfire. But it's us. Which
we're as Jane said, we do have a minority, a few minority investors, but we still own the majority of the business, which is absolutely our objective. And we have, not just those investors, but also the bank. I mean, they believe in us. They believe in what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. I mean, as we've said, like, we're also the people that you would hire to go build a distillery, right? Like, whether we owned it or didn't own it, we are also the people that I would think that we could come in and at least consult on a build. And obviously we've done a lot of capital projects through the years that are very similar to what we're doing. But I mean, it's basically just the two of us. And we're very thankful, I think, to have each other because I can't imagine doing this by myself and not having somebody else that can freak out, just as much as I can. The good thing is, I think what helps is I freak out on Monday, Jane freaks out on Tuesday, I freak out on Wednesday. So there always seems to be a little bit of that balance where we keep each other fairly grounded, no matter what. Like not even going too high with it, right? Like we're the consummate optimist and pessimist, which with each other we just play different roles every day. But
I think it's usually you freak out Monday through Thursday, and then I freak out Friday.
Oh yeah, let's color this as you're the more rational one in this group. I mean,
no, I'm the I'm the less detailed. So you're like living in the details. Like, oh my God, how's this gonna work? And I'm like, it'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm like, Jane, when was the last time you opened up our financial spreadsheets? Like,
I haven't turned my laptop on in 2 weeks. It's fine.
Yeah, do I have Excel? Like, is that even loaded up on my laptop?
Oh my gosh.
But we also, I mean, we laugh about it, but that's where I like to live, right? Like, I mean, I'm somebody that likes the details, and I want to make sure that if we get an invoice, we're paying it, pretty much immediately, like all these things. But you also have to have the flip side of that, which are, if you're living in the details, then you're not even focused on the business, right? So it's worked really well because, with basically Jane's experience and how she's built herself up through the industry, whether it's brand building or innovation or all these. I mean, these are people that are very free thinkers, and that's how you have to have that combination. So yes, I am a little more wound tight than Jane is, but at the same time, I mean, I don't mind that because I want to make sure that all these things are happening because I know she's handling all these things over here. So it works out really well.
It takes a team to make the dream. It's one of the things we've talked about. We're in season 8 of the podcast now, and we've always talked about our wives and kind of our project and how we've built it and some of the risks we've taken along the way. Listening to obviously what you're describing right now with your project is making me nervous, and I'm curious. How did your spouses respond to this?
I'll go first.
There's some giggling happening right now.
I'll go first so you can think about what you're going to say.
Mine's a very simple answer.
My husband's excited. He's in the industry. So he actually worked at Maker's Mark as well at the time. He's still with Beam Suntory. He's over at James B. Beam Distilling. And so, he's supportive and excited. And I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she tells me every day she does not want to be a whiskey distiller. And I say, great, me neither. But she's excited. And, I think it's not even just been our direct family. It's been our extended family, friends, and then industry. Like the support we've had from friends in the industry has been pretty humbling. I mean, I'm not a super sentimental or emotional person, and I could tear up thinking about just the people that have called or reached out or the support we've had from Rob Samuels still checks in every couple of weeks to see how it's going, to people still at Beam Suntory, to Bernie Lubbers at Heaven Hill, just friends. Yeah. So it's been pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So my divorce was final in June of last year. I
didn't mean for that laugh to be so loud.
Listen, it's not easy. I mean, I've been in the industry for over 26 years, and I've spent a lot, I've been based in ops, but I've spent a lot of time on the road, other things, did a 3-year stint down at Cruise and Rum. And these were all, right. It's one of the things that I talk about. It's, I've only worked for 2 companies and worked for multiple plants within those companies, but like take Cruisin', for instance, right? Like that is not an easy thing to do, and to relocate your family with 2 young kids. And that's what we did. So we relocated down there. We came back after 3 years. And it's hard. It's hard to be married or to be, with someone that's in the industry, because it is very demanding. As much as we love it, it's very demanding. It is not a 9-to-5 job. It's a nights and weekends too. And, I'm lucky in a way that my kids are a little bit older. My son just turned 22. My daughter's 20. They're both in college. My son graduates this year. And you're either willing to take on that risk together or you're not. And let's just say we were not. And it was she realized that she just didn't want to do it. And I realized that if I don't go do it, I don't know what our relationship looks like going forward if she's not supportive of it. So anyway, it was cordial, it was amicable, but it is kind of the part of the industry, or even going out and doing something like this, that it happens. It is a big risk, and the thing about it now is if this were to go under, it's just me. Right? Like, I'm not going to impact anybody else. It's just my house. It's just my truck. It's just, they're not going to get my new dog. I can promise you that. But they might try to come get them. So I get it. I mean, it is not easy, and so
Yeah.
that's how mine went. So yeah,
Jason's like, I am never asking this question again, ever.
Yeah, I meant to play it safe by using partner instead of spouse and was beating myself up over that misstep. You really took that to another level, Denny.
Oh, sorry.
I really appreciate your honesty there, and I apologize if it was maybe an overly personal question.
No.
But
I'm
you
pretty
really
transparent.
picked it up and ran with it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Joshua, I'll let you ask the next question while I take a time out.
Denny, I really liked what you said before about, this distillery, this project that you're working on. It's not for you, it's for the next generation and the generation thereafter. So what is it that you're building for this generation and the generations to come? And how does it differ from what you had been doing with the two previous companies that you're with? What is that vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think, without a doubt, take Maker's Mark, part of Beam Suntory. I mean, that truly is the definition of a generational operation, right? Like they filled their first barrel in 1954. I know when I first started, when I did my first stint at Makers in 2003, I think we had 70 employees, right? So I come back in 2018, and then when Jane and I left in 2020, we had close to 300.
Wow.
And they are located in Loretto, Kentucky. So you have a town that probably is about 500 people, yet you have a distillery that employs 300, and you're providing $30+ an hour jobs, incredible benefits, profit sharing, right? Like all these things. So it's not generational, like Jane and I are handing this off to our kids, right? Like no matter what, it's generational in that there are, at one point at Makers, I believe, I can't remember, we were at I think we had 3 generations of employees that were working at the distillery. And there are multiple 2 generations. And that, I mean, the pride that they have in that, it's great and it's awesome and we love to be a part of that. But to have the opportunity to go do that ourselves and do it in a community that does not have a distillery but is right in the middle of the Bourbon Trail. So, Springfield, which is in Washington County, now they're lucky because they're going to have a few others come online not long after us. But to be that first, they want this so badly because, these jobs are generational jobs and they are, to pay, $30+ an hour in Kentucky that's a life-changing wage, for some people. And that's what's exciting for us. So even though we might start with, let's say 35 employees, more than likely, not that we're going to have the trajectory that Makers had, but, by year 6, 7, 8, we'll probably have 70 employees, right? So, and how that tentacles out into the community and the impact it has, that's what's exciting for us. Now, and I'll let Jane go into like what our vision is for this generation and this distillery and, from a liquid standpoint, but from a community standpoint, that's what's really exciting for us is to build our own like little community within Springfield. And we're really, really, really excited about that because they deserve it.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful to hear. It reminds me of, the Springbank Distillery in Campbelltown, who, that distillery now belongs to Campbelltown. It's for the community. And when you talk about that element, it's great. Yeah.
And it was one of you asked about the moments of fear and this is real. And I think as we've put a hiring plan together, like it's one thing to fuck up our own lives, but once you start hiring people and their families are dependent on these jobs for their livelihood and their mortgage and their food on the table, like that's a different level of seriousness that, yes, we've managed teams before, but we've not been responsible for their paychecks necessarily at the end of the day or their healthcare package or their benefits. And we take that really seriously. I mean, more so than the whiskey you're making. Like that is people, those are 30 families so that you're affecting their lives every day. Like that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think the cool part about it too is if we've realized anything in our careers is they're the whiskey makers. Make no mistake about it, right? Like they are the ones that are going to be in the day-to-day control of every drop of that whiskey. And so we need them to, pretty much enact our vision. And so if you have good people, you're going to make good whiskey. And we fully believe in that. Because, when we could talk about the title master distiller and all that, but the reality of it is those distillery operators are the best master distillers you'll ever have. So treat them that way, right? Like treat them like they are the guardians of the liquid. And so they can go take the vision that mainly Jane has laid out, because she's got, just great ideas on nothing super revolutionary, but just like what's meaningful in making that drop of whiskey and having the team to go execute that. And then selfishly, we're not going to get called at 2 a.m. every night, or, all of those things when you're running a manufacturing site. So maybe we can, sleep through the night because we got good people that we know can make great decisions because they believe in it just as much as we do.
Before we make that pivot to brand and liquid and future, I just want to close the conversation on really where we'd started even before we started the interview, where we were just talking before hitting record, which is you're making this move from within a corporation to being two independents out in the world. And I love what you're saying about community and place and, bringing people into that vision. But, obviously with the sale of Single Cask Nation brand and assets, we took a step into the corporate world and a little bit of a safety net or an umbrella, right? There's that sense for us that for the first 13 years, we were the ones setting up the phones and running the interwebs and sweeping the floor and, and we brought in Jess to help alleviate some of that. As you two make this move from within the corporate culture to being independents, what are you finding advantageous in that? And then where are you missing the corporate umbrella?
I think advantageous is just the decision making, right? It's just the two of us. So when you're sitting in a room and you have a really strict budget, just to give you a real life example. So when we started looking at this, the world's changed a lot in the last few years. And so, if we had built this same distillery 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been a $30 million project. So when we had budgeted this out, that's really about what we thought we would need to get operational. And when it came back almost double that, right? And you're like, oh, shit. I guess I'm glad I didn't know, or we never would have quit our jobs, our wonderful, wonderful jobs. But you get real clear, real quick on what the priorities are, really quick.
Yeah.
And luckily, our North Star was super aligned. We hadn't really had those conversations, but it was 5 minutes of looking at each other and saying, you save the capacity and you save the quality, screw the rest. I don't need a fancy door handle. We don't need, you know what I mean? We can pave the road later. Gravel's okay. Like you get real clear real quick. And those are decisions that, for better or worse, in a large corporation, there's so many key stakeholders that there's a lot of conversation and a lot of opinions and a lot of weigh in. And I think that piece, has been interesting and scary and refreshing. Like there have been moments where, and Maker's Mark, it's still family operated. So it's less corporate than most. Like for the most part, Rob and Bill still think it's 8 people in a loft making decisions. But I think for us, it was this moment of, okay, we can make these decisions, but also just because this is the way we've always done it, doesn't mean we have to do it that way. Like our groundbreaking party, we were like, oh God, we're going to have to wear suits in a field with scissors. And it seems, we were dreading it. And then I can't even remember, one day we're like, well, why do we have to do that? Who's telling us we have to do that? Like, why are we projecting this on ourselves? We're like, fuck that. Let's have a keg party. Like, it's so,
nice.
I think those have been the advantageous. There are things, we were telling you the cell phone story, Denny. I was talking about Verizon. You tell the story better than I do. There, oh my gosh, there are things we miss about working at a larger company.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on that story alone, I mean, we almost came to a screeching halt the first 5 days that we were doing this. What Jane doesn't know is she's due for an upgrade on her phone, because I handle all the details, right? So she's due for an upgrade on her phone, but there is no way that we're going to do that together. There is no way we're going to do that together, because. But
she said you might have got loud in the store. Is that?
Thank God there was a Wings and Rings, which is basically a beer joint, 50 yards away. So I just said, I'm going to be over here pounding beers. Come get me when you're done. This was day 5. I was done. When she couldn't remember her iTunes password, right? Like her Apple ID password. And this is day 5, and I'm like, are you shitting me right now? I just thought you put your face up to. I'm like, no, that's not. There's a password that exists behind that. But anyway, yeah, definitely the decision making for sure. I mean, the great thing about it is, you know, we're here where we are today, and we haven't. I think we've done one PowerPoint that might be 3 pages. And honestly, that was like a business plan that nobody wanted to see. I mean, Jane put it together. It's good. It might be 4 pages. And then nobody wanted to see it. We're like, okay. So that's been nice. I think definitely the things you miss, and the cell phone touches on it. But yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of those support functions, not that you ever take them for granted, but it's also, okay, how are we going to solve this? And, you know, HR being a big one, right? Like setting up, you know, we've got our payroll set up. We've got our health insurance set up, and now I'm working on the 401k and what that looks like, what kind of match we're going to provide. So there's that. There's, you know, the quality piece, right? Like, even though I started in quality, well, I haven't run a GC or GC mass spec in 23 years, right? So it's making sure we've got, you know, good people that we can hire and go do that. So it's a lot of those support functions that are incredibly critical, that when you're part of a larger organization, they have these teams in place, and it's easy to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, and then you kind of back away, and then they come back to you a day or two later with the solve or a solution. So, you know, those are certainly the things that, you know, we'll be able to build some of that into our operation, but not near the depth that we're used to, you know, from Beam Suntory or even Heaven Hill when I was there.
And the quality piece is an interesting one, because we were designing the lab. And, you know, everything starts off of like the Cadillac version or the Pipe Dream. So it's like, here's all the equipment we would like. And it's like, we can only afford like our noses, and that's it at this point. So it's like, we'll go the old fashioned way, which it's still the most powerful piece of equipment you have. But you get real spoiled on all of the science. And the truth is, we're a startup. We got to build to that. We're not going to have the level of sophistication from a scientific analysis standpoint for quite a while. So we will miss those things big time when it comes to the operation.
And it's good. I mean, and the good thing is you do have access to that. It's just all third party, right? So you're not going to get the real time results. You're not going to get, but it's going to allow us to, as Jane said, build into, you know, what we think we need. And because, I mean, to buy a GC mass spec is probably, you know, a $400,000 investment. And then, you know, if we, you know, we're going to need an HPLC, maybe we'll get an NIR, you know, like all of these things are awesome to have, but
I'm taking, acronym. Like, we don't know what any of these things are, Danny. Like, they sound expensive, but I don't know what they are.
It's basically like if you smell grass in the whiskey and it's not bad, but it's not supposed to be there. You can run it through a GC and say, okay, my acetaldehydes are off by this amount. So here's how we go make an adjustment in the distillery to put it back in spec. So it's the equipment. It's basically the equipment that's looking at the DNA of the whiskey at different stages to really understand what's happening in the operation or with the raw materials and adjustments you might need to make. So you've gotten very reliant on those things where we're just going to have to do it by, luckily we've got 44 years together of going, okay, here's what I smell. Here's where I think it's coming from. Go fix it. Where we're not going to have the science to necessarily validate the sensory, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Yeah. And what is the GC in GC?
So a GC is a gas chromatograph. So basically, you'll take your distillate or let's say a finished whiskey, and you inject it into a machine that basically boils it off, right? So as it boils off, it measures at what temperature, at what volume it's coming off at, and then based on the properties of chemistry and chemicals in general, it can identify what that is and then at what quantity. So it's really creating a fingerprint, a chemical profile fingerprint. Gotcha. so that what you're smelling, you can say, okay, I know this is in here, but I'm not sure what level it's at. And then you can go actually take a look. And then, if you're running a GC mass spec, which is just basically an attachment that goes on to that. Now you're looking at your ethyl carbamate levels and things like that are somewhat regulated within the industry. And I mean, if you're doing HPLCs, then now you're looking at liquid chromatograph, which is, you're looking at fermentation and
barrel extractives,
so things like that. Okay. And these are avenues to data that as Jane said, a lot of the times it's just validation. But there are times, especially on the innovation side, that this equipment can really give you the data that you need to continue to move forward or make adjustments and other things like that. And so, like we said, we're still going to, we are going to have a GC. Like we are going to have that but then you got to have, the technician that knows how to run it. So that, that's the other piece of it, which is how I got started in the industry. So hopefully in 5 years, we have all of that equipment in-house. Especially by the time we're bottling at the plant, we've got whiskey coming out of the warehouse. We have all of those things that help us, whether it's through blending or innovation or just going back and looking at, how things have progressed over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, wonderful.
Is it wonderful or is it really boring?
No. We've got a whiskey geek audience. These are questions that need answers, so this is very good. Very good.
But for as geeky as they are, there is that component, that liquid component that Denny was teasing, Jane, that you would get into. So what is the vision for your liquid? How will it be different from your experience at Maker's Mark, and Denny from your experience at Heaven Hill? How will you differentiate yourselves?
So I think our kind of, if you want to call it North Star or where we are, I think what you've seen, and it's not bad. Like all the things that have happened in the industry here in the US the last 10 years, like it's unrecognizable versus when we started. To Denny's point, I started in 2007 and there were 9 distilleries in Kentucky. Today there are 95, right? And you think about Colorado and you think about the Carolinas, like Tennessee, New York, California, Washington, Virginia, they're everywhere. And so because that was the thing too, is it's like, do we actually have a point of view? Do we have anything interesting or new to offer? Because if you don't, then you should just shut up, like it kind of thing, right? Or if you could do it better or do it well, but at the end of the day, we asked ourselves that a lot in the beginning. And the truth is, what we've seen is as the large distilleries, have had such demand and growth, they've gotten bigger, and that's not bad. They make phenomenal whiskey at a really affordable price that for my everyday, that's where I'm going all the time. The craft distilleries are pretty crafty. What we're not seeing for us is no one's really making the bourbons that we fell in love with 20 years ago. And part of that's as technology's gotten better or your raw materials, growing seasons change. Like there's a million reasons, but the truth is for us, we want to go make bourbon that reminds us of why we fell in love with it to begin with.
There you go.
And it's not about being traditional for tradition's sake or, cutting edge for cutting edge. It's really about, we have 44 years combined experience of not only understanding the raw materials, but understanding the processes and the manufacturing that go into making those raw materials into whiskey. And we just want to optimize flavor at every touch point, how we understand to do that. So honestly, that's it. It's not overly sexy or interesting. We're not bringing some new grain into the fold. We're not blowing shit up. Like there's nothing. It really is about making bourbon that we want to drink every single day.
So that brings me to the internet community. So many people talk about, they don't make bourbon the way they used to because they fill it a higher proof, or, they're not using the same, slow growth oak, or, insert reason here as to why bourbon isn't what it used to be. And so I guess my question is, have you determined what those things are that get you to that point of what bourbon used to be for you?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a lot of stuff that's not super sexy or talked about. It's a lot of the processes. I do think the thing I love about making whiskey and what we do is you're taking agriculture and then you're manufacturing it into something else. Denny's basically a wizard, and that's probably the nicest thing I'll ever say to him. But it's true. It is. It's like wizardry, right? And so I think part of the work is really understanding the grains, understanding, to your point, the oak and the cooperage and what's happening. But then there's things like, as you've had cooling coil technology and fermentation, you can be more efficient and consistent with setting your fermentation temps somewhere and then holding them somewhere else where you're not having to go, well, here's the 4-day forecast. I'll just open this window, or I better set it lower. So the yeast is behaving differently, even in fermentation, based on cooling coil technology. Now, does that mean we're not going to use cooling coils? Hell no, we're going to use cooling coils. But have you lost something, or has it changed along the way? Because now your fermentation spectrum is much tighter than it used to be from a temperature standpoint, right? Sure. So every step in the process, there's a choice. And there's every single choice layers onto the next. So for us, it's really understanding. I mean, we've both understand the process and every single touch point, and we're going to make choices, whether it's your beer density and your water to grain ratio, whether it's how you're using sour mash and what it's doing, how you're cooking, when you're pitching the yeast, what those fermentation temps are, the time you're going to put into it. All those choices matter. And so there's not one thing where I can say, here's how we're different. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be through the process and how we choose to go after flavor at each touch point, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, to add to that, it's not having this obsession with yield, right? And when we say yield, we're talking how much alcohol can we get out of a bushel of grain. And for us, it is not a competition to have the best yield in the industry. Now, granted, we understand that yield directly impacts cost.
Sure.
Right? Yep. But we'll sacrifice yield in order to not, and I don't want to say hold true to quality, but sometimes add a little bit of quality or add a little bit of flavor or character, like Jane was alluding to, like slowing down fermentation. We're not obsessed with doing a 70-hour fermentation, right? So that we can flip that fermenter, get it through the still. No, we're okay. Like if our fermentations are 4, 5, or 6 days, that's okay. We don't need to use enzymes, right? Like if our enzymes take us from a 5.05 yield to a 5.2 yield, that, economically that's kind of a big deal, but that also changes the flavor a little bit. So we're okay with the 505, right? And so I think it's really that mindset of, because I mean, shit, 30, 40 years ago, I mean, they knew yield, but they weren't calculating it at the 100th decimal place, right? Like, and so I really think it's about that. Not that bad decisions are made. Decisions are made because they need to be made, because it is about cost. But, the other thing about our industry too is, listen, we've got good margins. We're not the auto industry, right? We're not operating on a 2 to 3% margin, so that if your yield, whatever your yield measurement is, suffers a little bit, you might be losing 0.5% or 1%. And that's a big deal when you're at a 3% margin. But when you're in our industry, typically everybody's at a 50% margin, at least, depending on whether you're a producer or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's like we are not beholden to the accountants. Right. So we'll make the decisions that we think, like Jane said, touching flavor at every point. That's really kind of the objective, but I don't think it's rocket science by any means. And it even goes into maturation, right? Like our warehouses are going to be 24,000 barrel warehouses. They're not going to be the 58,000s that, you see today. And they're all great. And they're going to be rack houses or rick houses, whichever way people say it, right? Like we love rick houses. So they're going to be 24,000 barrel rick houses. It's cheaper, much cheaper in the long run to build a 58,000 barrel rick house, right? Because you only have to build one instead of 2.2, right? So, but those
they're all going to
face.
They're all going to face north to south, which is you're sacrificing some land. Like, I mean, and and here's what I would say though. Like, it's not, to Denny's point, we don't use language good or bad. Like it's just, these are the things that matter to us. And at the end of the day, some people might love the whiskey we make and others will go, you know what? Not for me. And that's okay. But, we've been pretty obsessed with kind of that level of detail when you think about the production process.
Mm-hmm. Could you speak just for a moment to that north-south versus east-west? Once again, don't think it's boring. This is curious stuff that nobody's talking about.
It's like an old wives' tale, I guess, or we used to hear. And I actually called Mike Veach and was like, talk to us about this. Like, have you heard this? But it makes sense if you think about the sun rises east to west, right? So if you have the warehouses facing north to south, the longest part of the warehouse is going to get the most direct sun throughout the day as the sun rises and hits. So ideally, you're getting more heat into that rick house. And so the microclimates and how you're going to, get maturation kick-started, because obviously all of maturation is temperature dependent. Now, humidity and airflow are going to affect how the temperature moves throughout, and then how the whiskey to water ratio reacts within those barrels based on your humidity from the bottom to the top. But temperature's your big driver on how the whiskey gets into the wood. So we've planned it that way. Now, that doesn't mean we might not experiment. Again, day one is like, get the 24,000 rick houses built, get barrels in the warehouse. Once cash flow becomes easier, we might start doing some fun, funky stuff. But that's been the thinking on those rick houses.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So these aren't, revolutionary ideas, right? But it's also,
they're recycled ideas.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the. When I first started,
okay, right?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. Listen, this industry has been fairly successful. If you look at how successful it was in the 70s, right? They didn't have access to all of this information or technology or things that are impacting process today, but they still made damn good whiskey. So that's really just our philosophy, and we're not in the historical books looking at, they did this, we pay attention to that. And so, if there are things that we can do that we either have experience with or we believe in the idea of it, then we're going to make that a part of our process. But as Jane said, they are recycled. It's nothing brand new.
But also, like what you said, Jane, about not tradition just for the sake of tradition. It's, might this be worth something? Might this be useful? Like, I like the way you're conceiving of that and applying it. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, in her example of cooling coils and fermenters is great, right? Because a 5 or 6 day fermentation with cooling coils is a lot different than a 5 or 6 day fermentation without. So, because you want that flavor development, but what you don't want is for bacteria to take over, kill all the yeast, and then you've got all these other things that are going on that don't have a positive impact on flavor. So, it's just recognizing where it makes sense. And again, if quality's at the forefront, that it makes it pretty apparent, what direction we need to go.
I'm curious in terms of the build out. Whenever we see a new brewery going up now, it must have a restaurant. It must have a way for people to buy on site. It must have an event space. As we're sitting here talking about tradition, are you building a straight up distillery, or is there a need in the current climate to have the various add-ons?
Right now, again, it goes back to your choices. A restaurant's it's a nice to have. It's not a need to have for us. So right now we're building a distillery and 2 rick houses. Tourism's definitely a part of our plan, though. My goodness. The bourbon industry, like those old school guys got together and they built something special when they worked with the KDA on the Bourbon Trail. And it's changed the lives of Kentuckians, like the tourism in Kentucky. Yeah. And we would be crazy not to want to be a part of that. So absolutely, tourism will be a consideration. Restaurant, you don't want us making a fucking sandwich for you. Like, I mean, it's, we look forward to sending our visitors to the wonderful restaurants that Washington County has to offer. But yeah, tasting room, bottle shop, that stuff, absolutely. But in the beginning, it'll just be standing on the grounds of our farm tasting. There will be nowhere fancy to do this tasting.
Nice.
Well, and it's that, as Jane said, I mean, trust me, we would love to have had that all part of phase 1, but when you think you're going to spend 30 and it comes in at 50, and your focus is on making whiskey, then it's easy to kind of push those things into phase 2. And hopefully we'll, be executing phase 2, not too much, long after we're fired up, but we're still going to have, like, you guys are in town, obviously. You come out to the distillery, and we're gonna have a cool place to, to share some whiskey and laugh and, show you around. But, for the most part, having a drive-in visitor center, we're going to be a little bit of ways away from that.
We have a singular room, and right now we're fighting about whether or not a skee ball machine can fit in it. So we'll see what happens.
I think the answer is you make
Hopefully
it
it's a $400,000 skee ball machine.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm also curious, that when your conversations got more serious, through the pandemic, and as we're talking here about the value of tourism, we saw distillers in Scotland who opened their doors believing tourism was here in perpetuity and lost foot traffic because of the pandemic. To hear you talk about, tourism is clearly important. Clearly it's community as well. And you can send people to local restaurants and various other places where they can spend their money. But you can distill in a pandemic. Right, it maybe took time to find some footing, but you can distill when you can't necessarily welcome people across the threshold.
And I'm going to brag on Denny for a minute.
Please.
Maker's Mark did not have a single hour of downtime throughout the entire pandemic. So we were considered essential, and we never missed a single day of production. And it speaks to his leadership, but also the team down there. So you're absolutely right. And I will say this, they committed to keeping, the 40 plus employees they had on the visitor side. They started working in the distillery. They started painting or doing cleanup projects. Like, they didn't lay off anybody, but it was an interesting time. And you're right. At the end of the day, the production, that's our priority, right or wrong.
Yeah.
But I wanted to say that because that was a really stressful couple of years, but like the team pulled together and it was pretty remarkable to see, honestly.
Look at that. So far, he's a wizard and he's an incredible leader.
This is the
you
nicest.
have partnered with Dumbledore.
I know.
Like, this is amazing. I'm single.
I'm as shocked as when the bank told us they were going to fund our project. So I'm kind of at a loss for words. No, but I mean, you know, Jane was right there through that too. Especially at Makers, that, you know, people always found it hard to believe, you know, these visitors would come in. They would challenge you on the fact that, you don't make every drop here. And it's like, yeah, we do. You're walking right through the heart and soul of everything we do. Mm-hmm. So the visitors were always a big part of the operation. So then all of a sudden, they weren't there. And I'll be honest, the first couple days or the first week, it's like, oh man, this is kind of nice. You know, like nobody, we've got the place to ourselves. It's pretty phenomenal. And then after the first week, you're like, I don't know that I care for this. Like this is not, you know, because the distillery there is the heart and soul of the brand. And so to not have people there, but you know, I mean, it wasn't just us. It was a lot of different people. In a way, you know, I felt like we were lucky that we could go into work every day because we were considered essential. Because we did have each other and we didn't feel as isolated. But I mean, you know, the distillery's going to run. Rain, sleet, or snow, I mean, it's going to run. If you've got fermenters that need to be distilled, we're going to figure out how to get them through that beer column. And because we want to get it in the barrel and get it in the warehouse and then just back away for a while. So that's always going to be the priority.
Excellent. Joshua, I've got one question to get us out of here, but I didn't want to leave anything if you had something in the chamber.
Yeah. It's more of a softball question. It's been ruminating in my head. What was the bourbon that you drank that you said, "Oof, this is it. This is what I love"?
I wouldn't say bourbon. I would say bourbons.
Okay. Bourbons.
And I think it's a lot of the brands that you would know or love from. I mean, it's not anything different necessarily than what we would drink today.
Oh, there wasn't like an aha moment with one of them that. Okay.
I mean, I think. I mean, maybe not with one, but I mean, it is interesting. Like when you taste some of these Dusties, and when we're talking Dusties, you know, we're talking like 15 years. You know, not
80s, 90s,
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you're always like, this is. Now, granted, you know, the bottle age is a bit of a thing, but you can also, especially when you spend a lot of time around distilleries and tasting, and you're kind of like, you know, there is something to that, you know, you don't see a lot anymore. But, you know, I think, you know, that's part of it. I think it was just going back and tasting some of these products that have existed in the past and be like, that is really, really good stuff.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, though, personally, I love Jim Beam had those. They did all those weird decanters through the years.
Yeah.
But the Duck decanter series was my personal favorite. And I don't know if it's just how it sat in those ducks. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah. It was the extra lead.
That was,
Yeah.
Pretty phenomenal.
Wow.
There you go.
Wow. Now we're looking out for duck decanters.
It's crossed our mind. Trust me, it's crossed our mind.
Well, thanks to you both for so much of your time. We'll get out of here on this. We're recording this interview on International Women's Day, and I'm curious what that means for each of you. If it means anything to you, if it means anything for Pod or Jane going forward.
You go first, Jane.
Jane was already rolling her eyes during the question, so be honest in your answer, Jane.
No, I mean, I love a day to celebrate women. I'm sad we need a day to celebrate women.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's I don't, as weird as this sounds, I don't sit around thinking I'm a women in whiskey. Like I just don't think like that. Do I know there's probably a responsibility? Yeah. You know, I'm 17 years in. I'm not the oldest veteran, but I am a veteran in the industry. And there were a lot of great women that came before me that paved the way. And I'm so appreciative and respectful. But there were also a lot of great men that helped pave the way for me. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one. Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, if I'm being perfectly honest.
There you go. Yep.
Denny, we should work on my answer to this from now on.
I think you handled it well.
Coming to you as a woman in whiskey.
I think, for me, I think I am lucky enough to be working with, probably, I think, the most talented woman in the industry. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased when I say that. And I think, the fact that she's an owner, right? Like we are equal partners, and we pretty much are lockstep. And even though we disagree on things as they come up, for the most part, we're in agreement. But even when we disagree, I mean, we kind of go at it. But I've seen where she doesn't get the credit that she deserves, and some of that is because she's a woman. I've seen it just being by her side in the industry. I hate it, and it makes me feel uncomfortable, but a lot of times people look directly at me, right? The conversation will start, and it'll be with me, and I'm like, and they know, and I know that that's probably more of a Jane question because it'll be about innovation and blending, and so, I think, there's definitely work to be done, but that being said, I think her as an owner is a big step forward in that, because I think that's a huge deal. And, I do think that people are going to see, how talented she really is with the liquid we put out, once we're ready to put it in a bottle. But it is a big deal. And I know she doesn't make a big deal out of it, but I take great pride in the fact that my equal is a woman in the industry and has, such a great impact on it already.
We're not going to say anything better than that in this interview. So sincere thanks to both of you for making time on a Friday morning. Your honesty, your transparency, we wish you absolutely nothing but the best. And we look forward to drinking with you in a field in Kentucky.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys.
Cheers.
And we're so excited for all of your change and success. And it's been fun watching you guys. And we really do hope we get to collaborate with you someday now that
100%.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Love that.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Cheers, guys.
Sincere thanks to Jane and Denny for their good humour, their time on what was a Friday morning, and their honesty.
Yeah.
And I'm still reeling a little bit from the incredibly leading question that I accidentally stumbled into with Denny. But he handled it like a champ. He didn't shy away from it, and I really appreciated the way in which it got gritty, it got real, it got into the details. As I'd said in my lead up to that question, you and I talk about our wives. We've talked about our wives on this podcast for what's now our 8th season. And we've talked about their support, and we've talked about the difficulties, and we've talked about a time when we had 2 young kids, and now our kids are getting older, and life's getting a little bit easier there, but other difficulties come along. And so the fact that you and I have always been honest about that, and the fact that Denny was seemingly happy to be honest about it as well, it shows that, we are in a glamour industry. We are flying around the place. We are tasting cask samples. We are making cask selections. We are going off for dinners at some fancy places. There's a reality behind it. There's a family behind that.
Yeah.
There are relationships behind that. I cannot thank him enough for the honest answer that he gave and his willingness to talk about what's never easy for anybody. But he was right there. So cheers, Denny. Sincerely, cheers.
Yep. Yeah, many thanks. Jason, we have an email that we want to get to in a little bit, which we will. Before then, though, I wanted to get back to the promise that we made to our listeners, and that was our news segment, where we're going to share some tasting notes on the 3 bottlings we've just released really quickly there, but also share some news on our U.S. retail and our rest of the world retail. So...
Well, maybe before, maybe during, but I'm going to have to pour myself another Ardmore because I finished it during that interview.
Jeepers creepers. I guess... Oh. I've never heard that sound come out of your butthole before.
It goes both directions.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! Life story of Playboy Penny! Extra, extra! Extra, extra! Read all about it! Me and that Playboy in trouble again!
So here we are. New website. 3 new bottlings. We each have some Ardmore 25-year-old in our hand. We've got some Ardnamurchan to the side, some kosher for Passover rum. I want to go over tasting notes really quickly because I think one of the questions that I get asked quite often is why we say yes to a cask. And I want to go over some of the tasting notes and our experience on these whiskeys to explain why. However, both you and I are very long in the tooth. And so this is my challenge. Oh, sorry. Let me correct that. So, Jason, you're really long in the tooth. And so why don't you give me what you're getting on the nose of this 25-year-old, and then I'll do the palate, and then we could talk about why we selected it. How's that?
I'll give you one word on the nose.
Yeah.
I'm getting history.
Oh, I like that. All right. You got some splaining to do. Lucy.
Well, it's that bygone era, right? We mentioned the last episode. We mentioned it in our extended tasting notes that are on the YouTubes in our channel over there. And I say extended, gosh, I think we're right around 10 minutes on those, which I think for us is really our truncated tasting notes. But we got through it pretty quickly. The history aspect here, right? Coal-fired, direct fire stills at Ardmore. The little bit I've been reading on it, it gave you kind of different areas of focus within that liquid. Parts of the liquid would boil in particular ways. Would give you kind of a variety of flavour within a single distillation.
Okay.
One of the things we talk about constantly is you hear the word consistency.
Yeah.
You hear it consistently across the Scotch whisky industry. And what they're looking for there is a consistency in performance. One thing that you did not get with coal-powered direct-fired stills was consistency.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Fair.
And so you got high highs, and sometimes you got low lows. And, you weren't always fully in control of the process. Certainly not the way they're fully in control of the process now. And so to have this kind of example of Ardmore from a time when consistency wasn't the word that it is now. And it feels remarkable to be talking about a May 1998 distillate in that way, right? Right. I was already 24. No, I was coming 24, to be honest. You were already 24. 25.
25. Well, 25 come 6th of December.
Oh, is that your birthday? I never heard that. And so, look at that face. I can come back to work for that face. Lucy. So that's what I mean by history. That's what I mean by a different time. That's what I mean by a different era. This isn't newly modern Ardmore. Yeah. This is late 20th century Ardmore. And that's very cool. So there you go. That's my one word.
There you go. Did I mention you were long in the tooth?
To be fair, you asked a follow-up, so.
Well, did I? What was my follow-up? We're so long into your story, I forgot what my follow-up was.
You said I had some explaining to do, so I did some explaining.
Oh, that's right. Yep, there you go.
I love the fact that you can forget your own question.
Who?
While I'm giving a response to it.
For me, and I'm not even going to go into tasting notes here because I just want to enjoy this whiskey. Maybe I will. But listen, you and I have different things that we like about peated whiskeys. We both have a love for young Islay whiskeys where the peat is like grabbing you by the taste buds and saying, pay attention to me. This is important. What I love about this one is it ticks the other box that I quite often look for, which is that softer, more more elegant version of peat smoke going on here. And this is one of those whiskeys that you just kind of want to relax with because of that softer peat, but at the same time, the nose, the palate, like one of the things we talk about, and here comes the tasting notes, is those bright citrus notes, those lemon bars, that lemon curd coming through. And so you've got this whiskey that's living in two worlds where it's bright and fresh and engaging, but then as soon as you swallow the liquid, it's like Calgon, take me away, and you're just, that's nice, right? This whiskey is really wearing two hats, which I quite like.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I also want to point out the cask strength of it is 46.7%.
Yep.
And so, you don't have to be afraid that the fats, the oils, the lipids have been watered down with the dilution there.
Nope.
All of those oils remain. All of those flavors that come with those oils remain. Don't be nervous about the 46.7 on the label.
Yeah.
It stands up beautifully as an older cask strength whiskey.
Right, 100%. And so, we're looking at, and this is something we've talked about for years, and this is the funny thing. It used to be $10 per year for an independently bottled whiskey. That was your rule of thumb. However, for years now...
10 years ago. 10 years ago, yeah.
Right, rules of thumb change. That has changed. Now it's $11. Now it's $12. Now it's $20, depending on the distillery and who the bottler is and where they got the cask from. And, you can go on ad infinitum. But really proud of the fact that this one is being sold for $2.75 on the website. That's just a hair over $10 per year for a 25-year-old single cask strength, single malt Scotch whiskey from a distillery that doesn't produce in this manner anymore. Come on. Like, I'm really, really proud of that fact, and I was excited to include it in our first three offerings. So those are the reasons why I was happy to select this one and put it forth to our members.
It's exactly $11 a year of age, right?
At $2.75?
It's exactly 11.
How is that even possible?
Just a hair over 10. Math is undefeated, Joshua.
Holy shit, it's exactly $11 per year.
Welcome to One Nation Under Whiskey. I'm your host, Jason Johnston Yellen. Today joining me is math whiz, Joshua Hatton.
Ooh, carry the one. What's the square root of -1?
I will tell you, your confidence really built there when you took off your shoe and sock and had an 11th digit. That was game changer. Game changer.
I just don't know why there was a shoe and a sock in my pants, but here we are anyway. So
it's always the sock and the shoe with you.
Listen, I'm going to pour some of this Ardnamurchan because I got some things I want to share.
Man, I can't remember the last time I had a whiskey.
Was it for breakfast this morning? Or just now? So this is our first Ardnamurchan for the U.S. We bottled one that was an ex-bourbon cask for UK, Europe, Japan, Israel, etc.
Absolutely. Selected by Jessica Lomas. Jessica
Rabbit Lomas.
That's it, indeed.
So she went for the bourbon cask.
Yeah.
We went for the sherry cask.
We're good like that.
And what I love...
I actually have...
Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Joshua.
No, go ahead. I'm used to it by now. No, go ahead, Jason.
It's the only way
you go ahead.
It's the only way I
You
can
do it.
participate in any conversation. I was just reaching for the bourbon cask sample, Ardnamurchan, that was the global release.
I've got it right next to me.
Selected by Jessica Rabbit. Lomas. Oh, that's good.
Right. It's
that's
fucking
good.
It's fucking Ardnamurchan, Jason.
I don't have a bottle of that. Dear Jess,
Ardnamurchan, yeah.
please, could you fix it for me to have a global release Ardnamurchan in my office in Virginia? Thank you
Dear
very
Jess, stop. Please send over a bottle of Ardnamurchan from the ROW collection. Stop. Do it now.
I
Stop.
love the fact that I can now conduct my correspondence over One Nation Under Whiskey. We've sent a verbal email to James Saxon. We're now sending a verbal telegram to Jessica Rabbit Lomas. Oh gosh, I wonder who else will reach out to this episode.
So,
Dear Oliver Chilton.
please upload yourself to our houses so we can drink with you in person. So listen, I'm so excited to have this Ardnamurchan here for the U.S. for a very personal reason. I've mentioned to listeners that Ardnamurchan has made it into my top 5 distilleries of all time around the world. They have. But what some listeners may not know is Ardnamurchan has made it into my top 3. That's right. They are my 3rd favorite. This is of all time. This is like, that's big.
This is remarkable. Remarkable.
And
Who are the other 2?
Lagavulin being number 1.
All right.
Springbank being number 2.
Ooh.
Imperial being number 4.
3B.
3B. And Kilhoman being number 5.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Number 5 for Kilhoman. Okay.
There's so many distilleries, Jason. Maybe if they sell us a cask, they'll move up. You know, who knows? Ardnamurchan
Dear
sold us a
Anthony-
cask. They got up to number 3.
Dear Anthony Wills, please could you sell?
One of the reasons why I was so happy to have this particular Ardnamurchan specifically for the U.S. is while A, it retains its Ardnamurchan earthiness, delicate, salty quality that's sort of like heavier. There's just a heaviness to it.
Yeah.
But there's a bright sweetness that comes through that's almost bourbon-like. And I just think of our American... I think of our American nation members, and especially those that love their wheated bourbons and just, you know, they're sort of well-aged bourbons.
Yeah.
This is going to fall within that wheelhouse because there's a delicious oaky sweetness that comes through on this that I really feel it's a nice bridge from single malt or from bourbon into single malt for the bourbon drinker.
So allow me to support your supposition.
Ooh, all right. Support my supposition.
We got an email, and I didn't ask for permission to use it on the padcost, so I'll only say it came from Bryant, and I'll leave it at that. I won't add a last name.
I'll only say it came from a person who's has one of the rarest names ever.
You think so?
Bryant?
Brian Gumble. Brian Gumble is one of the, you know,
The news
Mount
guy?
Rushmore. Yeah.
Brian
He's a Bryant.
Gumble reached out? Why is
Joshua, I
Brian...
said I wasn't going to use the last name.
Wait, are you serious?
just-
Is this Brian Gumble?
No, I'm just saying he's a famous Bryant. You're saying it's one of the rarest names. Like there's a guy on the telly called Bryant. Look, it's not a stretch.
All right, go ahead. So Brian Gumble reached out.
To say, I will neither confirm nor deny. So Bryant wrote in to say, look, I've been a bourbon guy for 10 years, and I'm really getting into the coastal, salty, sherried sweetness. And he was eager to secure an Ardnamurchan on the website.
Whoa.
And I can confirm that he did grab an Ardnamurchan on the website. But so much to your point, right? yeah, there's clear notes there that pertain to Scotch and Scotchies that we love.
Oh, yeah.
But heft and earthiness, there's a bridge there. And I would love for some of those bourbon drinkers to come over, try some Ardnamurchan. Listen, I thought about this actually during the week. Look at what Jane and Denny were saying about traditional bourbon production.
Yeah.
And what have we been saying about Ardnamurchan?
Yeah.
It's traditional Scotch production over there.
Yep.
And I think if you are a fan of tradition, if you like that place, if you want to check that box, I think this Ardnamurchan is spot on for that as well. And then I will tell you something. We always say honest things on this padcost. And I will tell you quite honestly, Joshua, on Thursday, our launch day, and we had some lovely, lovely sales, and the nation came out and supported us, and I thank them most sincerely for doing that here in the United States of America. I poured a wee celebratory Ardnamurchan in my house. That was the dram I had to connect with the nation supporting the launch. So
there you go.
Yeah, and I fucking loved it. Oh, I sat on my deck. It was 73 degrees, 23 centigrade for those in other climes. And I just had a wee sippy, sitting in my chair, sun on the top of my head. Oh, lovely.
Does not get much better than that. Holy moly.
All right, get us out of here with the Thornton. Talk to me about Thornton, kosher for Passover rum. Also wonderful for springtime backyard imbibing with friends.
100%. In fact, I'm going to be doing some videos that's going to highlight my favorite rum cocktail that I'll be using this Thornton for, but also some backyard drinking ideas as well. So, again, as I mentioned before, this is our third kosher for Passover rum, and our third time partnering with our friends at Thornton Distilling.
Thanks to them.
Thanks to them, indeed. The first two we did were very easygoing rums, almost in the Foursquare realm of rums, where it was just nice, easygoing flavors. This one we just released is what they call their high ester recipe, that brings out all of these tropical fruit flavors.
Yeah.
Right. So think papaya and bruised pineapple. Right. And then when you taste it, you're looking at some oak influence coming through here with just like thick vanilla extract, oak spice. You got some nice warm caramelly kind of notes going on. And then these sort of brighter, sweeter, sugary notes coming through as well. And but then the fruits come back in the finish in a really, really nice, satisfying way. Maybe a little black pepper in there as well. But anyway, like I said, I'll have a cocktail recipe coming in. I've been calling my daiquiri the Pharaoh softener. Right? Because God tried to soften Pharaoh's heart during the Passover story, during the Exodus from Egypt. And then Ari Clafter, who is the head distiller at Thornton Distilling, he makes a daiquiri with their own rum, and he calls it the Dayenu daiquiri.
That's also good.
That's also good. So for those of you who don't know what the word Dayenu means, just go ahead and Google it. It's a fun word.
It's spelled exactly how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Dayenu. L. Dayenu. Anyway, so there you go. So those are the three bottlings that we put up on our website. The Ardmore is $275 a bottle. The Ardnamurchan is $130 a bottle, and the rum is $90 a bottle. And then start looking around on store shelves because we have our retail release coming. So
absolutely. I was telling Bryant this as well.
Bryant Gumbel?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
There's 4 bottlings, and there's actually a 5th one. I want to touch on that in a second. So there's 4 bottlings that you'll find on any store shelves or a good whiskey good whiskey shop store shelf. And that will be our 13-year-old Sherry Cask Dalhuin, Dark as Night. Our 13-year-old Linkwood, that's in First Fill American Oak. Then we've got our 10-year-old Diamond Rum, which is a Guyanese rum from the Port Morant stills. So those are the wooden stills, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
And then finally an 8-year-old Kalila, which is just bright, fresh, coastal, zesty loveliness.
And that was the very point I was making to Bryant when we were having this conversation about the Ardnamurchan that he was very excited about.
Yeah.
I said, basically what you said earlier in this episode is, we're also really searching out young, coastal, salty Islas. Yeah. And our Kalila absolutely checks that box. Right? So he was excited to find that in retail. It is not there yet, depending on where one is. But definitely ask your store for it. Make sure they're asking their distributor for it. This is grassroots.
Yep.
We're an independent bottler. You got to be making demands of your favorite retail store.
Yeah, and you can actually go onto our website and there's a link on our website that sort of helps you find the retail bottlings, or at least the states in which the retail bottlings could find their way into. So if you go to the Single Cask Nation website and just check out I think you scroll down and it says Out in the Wild, you'll find a link that has like retail inquiries, and that will show you the list of the states that we're in. So,
I'll even go to bat for Wine Searcher here, wine-searcher.com. We get a monthly email from Wine Searcher telling us what people have been searching for regarding Single Cask Nation across the United States. So if we see an uptick in Wine Searcher searches in a particular spot, we can try to help get bottles there too. And so give us a performance, right? Let us see. Go on wine-searcher.com. We are not invested in them.
No,
we get no kickback from them. They are not yet sponsors of One Nation Under Whiskey. There's no conversation being had. Joshua's looking at me like we're deep in conversation.
Well, you said the word "yet," and they're like, okay, that's a leading word.
Well, it's true though, is it not? Like they're not yet a sponsor.
Well, that's true. They're not yet a sponsor. That's very true.
Not yet a sponsor. Dear wine-searcher.com, if you would like to sponsor One Nation Under Whiskey, please contact us at info@singlecasknation.com. I can tell you, you already have our email. Cheers.
So the fifth bottling, which isn't part of our regular range, it's part of a group that we're both members of, and we're really happy to partner with them.
Proud members.
So this is for Drammers Club. If those of you who aren't familiar, you can go to drammers.com. It's our friend Charlie Prince who runs it. And we bottled a special Inchgour, heavily sherry cask Inchgour that we've dubbed Drammers and the Angry Inchgour. And so you can go to drammers.com. If you're not already a member, reach out to them, become a member. We are members. And you can get one of those heavily sherried Inchgour bottlings through drammers.com. So definitely check them out. Bottlings for the U.S. aside, we will have Jess on a future episode to talk about what's really about to be bottled in, before March is out, fingers crossed. We're going to have 6 new bottlings for the UK, for Europe, for Japan, for Israel. And we'll bring Jess on to detail out what all of those are, but they're exciting as all hell. I can't believe some of the bottlings we have slated for that release.
Yeah, and I'll just take a second to say, I know we've spent a good portion today talking about what's going on in the US. When these global releases get announced, US nation members are going to be up in arms about what is going around the globe, but they know to trust us. They know here in the US to believe in the power of the nation. So don't throw your toys out the pram. Give Jess her due. Give the globe its due. And know that we're still looking out for our brothers and sisters cousins and cousinettes here in America.
All right. You, Jason, have in front of you an email from Sloop John B.
I absolutely love it when listeners who write in using one name, some might call it their Christian name, some might call it their given name, they instantly adopt the nickname as bestowed upon them by the creators of One Nation Under Whiskey Padcost. So, I'm very pleased to say that Sloop John B has written in with kind of a question. He's kind of playing the transition game here because he says maybe one for extra, or if you interview the owners, you can discuss the agricultural aspect, plus each bottle including all of the data for what is in that specific bottle. See below. So he's setting us up, right? This is lovely. So as we've announced, Extra as a standalone series came to an end. All good things come to an end. But we are looking to fold in occasional news stories. And Sloop John B has sent us a little something from Forbes entitled The Only Distillery in the World Aging Whiskey Outdoors Embraces Extreme Weather. The reason I thought this would be a good inclusion is Jane and Denny are spending so much money on warehousing when they could just be sticking their casks outside.
Yeah.
Maybe we could save them $1 or $2. If anything is possible in this episode, saving them money is top of that list.
Oh, yeah.
So Sloop John B sends us a few quotes pulled from the article. And might make life a little easier for us. And we don't necessarily need to do them all, but there is a main one here, which is, and we're talking about Black Fox here. And so the article states, Black Fox has partnered with the Saskatchewan Research Council to track the weather and study its effects on aging whiskey. The coldest recorded temperature at Black Fox's maturation yard is minus 44 degrees Fahrenheit, while the highest is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Within one day, the temperature has swung as much as 36 degrees, which to me isn't quite as exciting as they might think it is. We've had conversations with Amanda Beckwith at Virginia Distillery Company where they've had much larger swings than that. But that
Same with our friends at Backwoods.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
But anyway, continue.
When the daily temperature swings are this dramatic, researchers found that a small vacuum is created within the barrel, which sucks out whiskey that has seeped into the oak of the barrel. When the vacuum is released with a reverse temperature swing, aging whiskey is pushed back into the oak staves. It is a common knowledge that high temperatures matures whiskey faster, which is why whiskey from India ages faster than whiskey in Scotland. But Black Fox's research shows that temperature variance can have a similar effect. That was the point at which I knew I wanted to include it today. As soon as I got to temperature variance, I thought that was quite nice because, sure, we've talked about India, we've talked about Israel, but we talk about them in a way that is a consistently higher temperature than Scotland.
True.
And you see a consistent, there's that C word again, faster maturation in India and Israel when compared to Scotland. But I liked the fact that this was talking about variance and certainly picked up on something we have discussed on the podcast with Amanda, with Lee and Bree, down at Backwoods. And so I thought that was really kind of fun. So hold any thoughts you may have so far.
Okay.
So unique is each bottle of Black Fox's whiskey, since each barrel will have been subject to different weather, that each carries a unique coin bearing a code consumers use to find out the specifications of that particular bottle. The location where the grain was grown, the temperatures the barrels endured, and other information that makes each bottle special. And then a line that may or may not be somewhat controversial. The article concludes, it may be the only whiskey in the world where weather is an ingredient. So,
I mean, they started with a controversial statement and ended with a controversial statement. The fact of the matter is, I can think of 2 distilleries off the top of my head that mature casks of whiskey outside, beyond this one. And that's M&H. All of their Dead Sea casks are actually sitting in a chicken wire cage, open to all of the elements. And the majority of casks being matured at Hakata, which is a Japanese distillery. There may be roofs, but they're open-sided warehouses. So all of the elements are getting in. All of that heat is getting in. So to say they're the only distillery maturing casks outside, we're already dealing with something problematic. However, that statement aside, it only supports what they're really after, and it's this data to, what is the natural environment doing to the whiskey inside the cask. That's the most important thing here.
The thing for me, though, is...
Yeah, go ahead.
Variance is real.
Variance is real whether you're in a warehouse or not. But warehouses tend to protect a bit, right?
Right, yes. And that's the part I've been thinking about, right? Is at VDC... they're not going to have snow sitting on top of their casks.
No.
Right. But a very cold day is still going to affect the temperature in the warehouse. Mm-hmm. So that's still a very real factor. Listen, we live in an age where, and this has been true for many, many decades, is... everybody's looking for the thing that makes them unique, right? Dalwhinnie is the highest distillery in Scotland, right? Okay. Right? Highland Park is the farthest north on an island, but Wolfburn is the farthest north on the mainland. Okay, right? So everyone's looking for a thing. What was interesting to me is when you get to the part about the coin with the code, I start thinking about Waterford. And here we are, recording this episode right on the cusp of St. Patrick's Day. And I just did a tasting where peated Waterford was the 5th whiskey. And I shared the code on the back of the bottle with the people in the tasting. And I'm saying, everything is here. The only joke we make is you don't know what the farmer had for breakfast on the day of harvest. And I'm sure they might remedy that. But now you've even got that idea taken to another degree. See what I did there? Where they're also including the temperatures that the barrels endured. It's more information. It doesn't necessarily affect whether you enjoy or don't enjoy what's in the bottle, but it's another wrinkle. It's another bit of information.
Yeah, it's... listen, there's some good marketing spiel to be had around that. There's no doubt about it. But, I think back to our conversation with Jane and Denny and how, they were talking about their warehouses will always be north-south facing.
Right.
For very specific reasons having to do with the rising and the setting of the sun and how much, heat that warehouse will retain as it's maturing the cask. Like, all of that makes sense. So if the distillery is using that information to not only have some great marketing boxes to tick, but B, helps them to develop the spirit that they're hoping for. Listen, that's awesome. The only thing is, none of this is new at all.
Is anything really new, Joshua?
No, I guess not. I mean, no. It's not, but I mean, this is the reason why M&H, when they said we're going to store casks down at the Dead Sea, they wanted them to be in the full environment of the Dead Sea. Now, I think things have changed since, but when I was in Israel in 2019, all of those casks were sitting atop a hotel. I think they've moved because the hotel probably would have crashed under the weight of the casks. But you know, the idea is to really let that environment fully have control over those casks and the liquid inside. So it's being done. How deeply M&H are tracking that, I don't know. The fact that these folks are tracking it a little tighter, or at least that's what they seem to be doing, that's awesome. And I hope that it helps them. I just argue that it's not really that new. No. And I, let's give a rap over the knuckles to Forbes for concluding with it maybe the only whiskey in the world where weather is an ingredient. Like, every distillery that has a maturation space is using weather as a quote unquote ingredient. Every
ingredient's doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It's here we are.
They have been suitably wrapped across the knuckles, Joshua.
Word.
Okay, well, thanks to Sloop John B for sending that in. As I say, we don't have extra, but it is fun to still roll in some of these talking points. You led with the Compass Box news, and here we are covering a little bit of Black Fox, whoever they may be. Godspeed to them.
Godspeed to them. I wish them nothing but success. Sounds very interesting. Jason, can you pour just another little drop of something into your glass?
Done.
Wow, that was quick. I haven't even done it.
Honestly, I've been nursing my last sip for the goodbye.
Well, I've run out of sips, so I'm gonna pour a little something here. Let me see if I can get this on the.
Do you know what I love about those new retail bottles? They're almost anti-drip on pouring.
They are almost anti-drip.
It's real difficult to get a lingering drip running down the length of the bottle.
Well, what you have to do is you got to squeeze the lemon until the juice runs down the leg.
Oh,
yeah.
We should have put the Ardmore into one of the retail bottles then, since it is so citrusy.
Oh, I like what you did there. Yeah, so for those of you that don't really know what Jason's talking about, I'm holding on to one of our retail bottlings, which we've got new packaging, which includes a screw top. And
it's a cracking little screw top as well.
Right?
I'm quite fond of it.
And because it's a screw top, the pour spout is a little tighter, and it just makes for a little less drippage overall when it comes to pouring your whiskey. So that's a good thing. But listen, I want to raise my glass to James Saxon at Compass Box. Again, huge congratulations to him and this new news and his new role with the Compass Box. And to our friends Jane Bowie and Denny Potter, we wish you both nothing but success, all the success as you grow Potter Jane in the distillery. We're excited to visit with you and maybe drink in a field with you.
Check them out at potterjane.com.
Yep. And listen to our listeners as well, to all those listeners and to Nation members who have come to Single Cask Nation and have purchased these 3 new bottlings. Look, we're going to be releasing 3 new bottlings every month on our website. So please come back. Check out what we're doing. If you see bottles on there, grab them before they go, because they will go.
For U.S. e-commerce.
Sorry, thank you. I need to keep specifying for U.S.
Global
e-commerce.
audience.
I know, Jason. I know.
It's not all America. America 1 and America 1A is, I think, how you refer to the globe. Am I right?
Yeah, it's like America Junior. Yep.
There you go. Yeah. Whole globe. You're welcome.
And I raise my glass to you, Jason.
Cheers.
The man of the hours.
We made it to the second, but there will not be a fourth.
All right.
2 chins.
2 chins. Cheers, 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 cheers.